Born a country that hands you the Nobel Peace Prize with one hand and sells fighter jets with the other. A nation that preaches transparency but is torn between its own ideals. Its per capita arms exports rank among the top 3 in the world. This country is Sweden. It has a population of just 10.5 million, less than half of Shanghai, and a land mass larger than Yunnan, with a quarter of it inside the Arctic Circle, where the sun disappears for weeks. But the daily lives of billions are touched by this nation. The furniture you built, the music you stream, the seatbelt you click, and the milk you drink all trace back here. Welcome back to the world to reorganize the national transportation of 80 countries, reading 80 years after World War II. I am the leader, Yang Guo. Today is the 75th episode of the National Transportation Series, Small Country Survival in Sweden. This is the story of a remote nation rising from the ruins of World War II to a pivotal moment, joining NATO. On March 7, 2024, Sweden officially joined NATO as the 32nd member, ending 200 years of neutrality. So how was Sweden neutral for 2 centuries while actively shaping global conflict? During World War II, Sweden declared neutrality but exported 34 million tons of iron ore to Germany, a critical resource for their wartime steel. It also allowed over 2 million German troops to transit its railways. Neutrality was a business transaction. Sweden left the door open for all belligerents who paid. The cost was moral torment for decades. But in 1945, while European factories were bombed flat, Sweden's industrial base stood intact. Ericsson's phone lines were humming, Volvo trucks were rolling, and SKF bearings were turning. Post-war Europe needed everything, and Sweden had it all. In just 5 years, from 1945 to 1950, Swedish industrial output more than doubled. This was the starting line of its takeoff. The next phase was the Golden 30 Years, the construction of the Swedish model. In 1938, the Saltsjöbaden Agreement established that labor conflicts would be solved through negotiation, not strikes. This became the bedrock of the Swedish model. The Social Democratic Party held power for 44 consecutive years, a record in Western politics. The government coordinated, businesses profited, and unions distributed the wealth. High taxes funded universal healthcare and education. By the 1970s, Sweden's GDP per capita was among the top 5 globally. The small Nordic nation became a Cold War model of a third way, backed by industrial giants like Ericsson, Volvo, and SKF. In 1958, IKEA opened its first store, making furniture cheap by removing assembly, shipping, and sales staff. In 1959, Volvo invented the 3-point seatbelt and made the patent free to the world, saving over 1 million lives. This Swedish gene of making expensive things cheap became its global export. But cracks appeared. The 1970s saw high taxes drive away the wealthy. The 1990s brought a banking crisis that forced deregulation and privatization. Then came the digital age takeoff. Sweden joined the EU but rejected the euro, keeping monetary policy independence. Skype was born in 2003, Spotify in 2006, and Minecraft in 2009. Stockholm became Europe's second largest tech hub, producing more unicorns per capita than anywhere except Silicon Valley. But today, Sweden's thickness is still visible. IKEA's revenue is 44.6 billion euros with over 500 stores globally. Spotify has 713 million monthly users. Tetra Pak produces 180 billion packages annually. Ericsson leads in 5G, AstraZeneca is a top pharma company, and Saab's fighter jet orders are at record highs. R&D investment is 3.4% of GDP, and the Nobel Prize gives it global cultural headlines every December. Yet the cracks are widening. The first crack is moral outrage. Sweden is a top arms exporter, selling fighter jets to Brazil, the UAE, and South Africa. One hand distributes peace prizes, the other sells weapons. The second crack is social division. Over 20% of the population is foreign-born. Integration has failed. In January 2025 alone, there were over 30 explosions in Stockholm. Sweden's shooting fatality rate is 2.5 times the EU average. The third crack is industrial passivity. Volvo was sold to China, Ericsson is caught in the 5G trade war, and the Swedish krona hit a historic low in 2024. The fourth crack is geopolitical. On March 7th, 2024, 200 years of neutrality ended. Sweden joined NATO because the war in Ukraine proved neutrality could no longer protect it. But joining NATO means it can no longer play the game of pleasing both sides. For a nation that lived by neutrality for 2 centuries, this is an identity rewrite. There are many models for small nation survival. Switzerland relies on finance, Norway on oil, Singapore on geography. Sweden depends on making expensive things cheap. It hasn't occupied a country, but its furniture is in your home, its music is in your ears, and its seatbelt is in your car. This is its greatest post-war achievement, turning a remote nation into the source of a global middle-class lifestyle. But today, the Swedish model is being questioned. When China does subtraction better, when Nordic ideals are torn by violence, and when 200 years of neutrality must end, Sweden is looking for a new way to live. The next episode is about Austria, a country occupied after World War II that turned itself into the capital of global diplomacy. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts on Sweden's future. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.